and undergrad programs. He is also the assistant professor within management, so he actually teaches courses into the actual industry that you're learning about today. So again, these panelists that are up here for you, they're here for you. They're here to meet you, talk with you, give you a little bit of insight into what you're going to be expecting as you enter the field into management. So with that being said, please silence your cell phones. Better yet, turn them off. Computers, laptops, Macs, please, tablets, everything, go ahead and shut them off for at least 2 hours. Please give your undevoted attention to everyone up at the panel today. Again, I will introduce Dr. Soleimani.
Thank you, Julianne. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. How are you?
Good.
Doing good. Like Julianne said, aside from my administrative role, I also teach the management area, but it's something else that's a little bit it's special. I do these introductions for a lot of the disciplines that we're doing, but I actually got my degree in management from George Mason before I went on to graduate school and for my doctoral program. So I just want to give you all a shout out for all the management. Nevertheless, we have an awesome panel today. You know, the panel is taking time out of a really busy schedule for them to be able to talk with you. But I also wanted to commend you for taking time out of your schedule to go through this process. It is a wonderful opportunity. Sometimes you're going to have very limited opportunities to be able to interact with folks that are leaders in your industry. So I would encourage you to take the time to ask insightful questions and to take as much notes as you can to learn from these opportunities and to really continue building your network for career success. I also wanted to introduce the moderator for today's discussion, Dr. John Hillen. You all are in great hands. So Dr. Hillen comes from GovCon. He has spent many, many years of his life taking organizations like Cetera public. Before that, Dr. Hillen has been on the government side as an Assistant Secretary of State during the Bush administration, second Bush administration. So he will be a great source of information for you to be able to moderate the panel, take your questions, and do all of that great stuff. Any questions for me before we get started? All right, we'll enjoy the conversation, and Dr. John Hillen.
Okay. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay? Oh, good. Okay, and we'll get... Super. We've got our last panelist up here while I'm talking. So here's the way we're going to do this for about the next hour or so. I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves. They can say a little bit about themselves, their companies, and perhaps your connection to Mason. You know, what brought you here today, for which we're very grateful, as Dean Soleimani said. Then we're going to talk a little bit about how they, as leaders in the community, see management jobs and management majors and the kind of things that a brush with management or even a concentration or a major in management may prepare you for. And then open it up to your questions, okay? And you really, you can ask the professor. If you've got questions about the major itself and the academic stuff, I'll probably point you in the direction of our academic services department. But this is your chance to get, a couple of noted business leaders in the community from different kinds of companies and talk to them. And I can also serve in that, too. I run 3 or 4 different companies in the area and one up in New York City. So I'm the executive in residence and professor of practice at the School of Business. So I spent most of my career outside and am now in here teaching and helping out and doing some things of that nature. I'll also just say before we kick off is a lot of times, how many management majors are in here right now? Let me ask that first. Okay, so a fair amount. How many people have taken a management class or something, okay? And then how many people are just curious? Okay? And how many people came for the cookies? Cookies? All right, cookies. All right, we got one honest person. You're going to be terrible at management. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, exactly, you're going to be great. So it's a great field. Sometimes people say, and maybe we'll get onto this as we have a conversation with the panelists, sometimes people say, well, management kind of prepares you for the second half of your career, not the first half, right? I got to get a job first before I can become a boss, a supervisor, somebody who's kind of in charge of things, which is some of the things that management implies. That's not true. I graduated from school on like May 7th and started work on May 30th, and I've been in management roles from 3 weeks after graduation for my whole career, okay, on up through running 2,000-person companies. But I started small It went up. So lots of people have careers where management is the principal business skill that they use their entire career. And then further on, almost everybody, no matter what your field is, technology, accounting, highly technical fields, almost everybody trips at some point in their career, sometimes very quickly into your career, into some kinds of management responsibilities. So it's a very versatile and very valuable set of skills to have. So for those of you that aren't majoring in it, and I'm not here to sell the major, but I can say that it's really, really useful in the business environment. You can always gain new technical skills, but the ability to find someone who's actually good at managing others is almost harder than just finding 100 more people with a certain kind of technical certification or something like that. So just a little pitch from me about the utility of studying this in your careers, no matter whether you're starting next year or whether you're going to start in a few years. Okay, why don't we let the panelists introduce themselves, and if you could tell us a little bit about what you're doing at your current company, what your company does, and maybe the range of activities that if our students bump into it in some way, they'll encounter it, and then also the connection to Mason and why you decided to come out here. So Talmar, why don't we start with you, and we'll run on down the line. Thanks.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Again, my name is Talmar Anderson, and I have two firms, one of which is Talmar It Up. Yeah, they made me put my name in it. That's what marketing people will do too. I'm an operations and management consultant, and I work specifically with small business owners because oftentimes they don't have the management experience or the experience to structure their organizations. So I work with them in that time when they're building the entity. I also have a company called Trust Ed at Home, which is a monthly home maintenance services company. And that's a fairly new entity. I partnered with my husband. I liked him enough to open a business with him. So I have those two companies. I will tell you, historically, I have come from managing in corporate situations, major corporations. Then I went in to specialize in law firms, bossing around attorneys, one of my favorite things to do. As a manager in multiple levels, you have to walk that line of giving the right answer, whether they want to hear it or not. And so if you have a skill set that lets you be involved in conversations and people walk away feeling like they got something from it and weren't personally offended but could grow, then you would be a great manager. I'm affiliated with George Mason University Women in Business Initiative. I'm the chair of their board this year and next year. So I would love to see you at our events.
Great, thank you.
What she said. Everything what she said. So my name is Ed Hassan. I'm the founder and managing partner of Kaizen Human Capital. My firm does organizational development and HR consulting. Essentially, we help organizations get out of their own way, understand their people, help them build their culture, and align their values in their business with their employees across the board. I graduated from George Mason many years ago. Actually, my major at the time, I don't know if you guys changed it for the third time, but it's Decision Science and Management Information Systems, which was a huge part of management. There's a huge management component in there. I am a part of George Mason's School of Management Alumni Board, and I also teach here in the Executive and Professional Education program. So thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Greg McCarthy. I'm the CEO of AOC Key Solutions. We're a small business in Chantilly, Virginia, so we're neighbors to you guys. We've been in business since 1983, and what we do is we help government contractors win contracts. So we do everything pretty much to help contractors win, whether it's looking for opportunities to go after, to chase after, or to help them team with another government contractor to win a contract. But most of our work is proposal writing. So we hire a lot of proposal writers. We have business developers, and we have about 45 people, or about 40 people in our company right now. And I have a great time. I started out running one business for the company and worked my way up through operations. I did proposals, but I wasn't very good at it, to be honest with you. So much comfortable running the company, and our affiliation with Mason is we're quite selfishly motivated in that we're looking for talent always, and we've struck a relationship with the Career Services Group, and glad to be here today, so thank you.
Hi, I'm Larry Bensignor. I'm Executive Vice President and General Counsel of Eagle Bank. You may know us as the largest local community bank in the Washington area, or you might just know us as the name on Eagle Bank Arena. I am the fellow who led the charge on behalf of the bank to develop the strategic alliance with Mason. The name on the arena is but one part of an overall holistic relationship. My being here today is another aspect of it. I'm in my third career, so for those of you who are concerned that if you make a decision, you're stuck with it for life, it doesn't necessarily work out that way. I was very happy with what I'm doing, but things fell in my lap and I took advantage of them. I was in private practice for real estate and corporate law for 2 decades in downtown D.C. My biggest client, a Northern Virginia real estate developer, asked me to help oversee everything he was involved with, from management of his $350 million a year company to his personal investments, his household, and so forth. And 10 years later, the real estate developer who was my very first client in 1983, who had risen up to become CEO of Eagle Bank, asked me to become general counsel, and I joined Eagle Bank when it was $1.7 billion in assets 7 years ago. It's now $7.5 billion. I enjoy the opportunity to talk with you this afternoon, and I look forward to some fun dialogue.
Hi. Hi, my name is Steve Lord. Unlike Larry, I'm only in my second career. I currently work with the Amtrak Office of Inspector General. That's basically the independent watchdog of Amtrak. I'm sure everybody's familiar with Amtrak, very iconic brand. The good news is, unlike most of the other 73 federal inspector generals, we're in a growth mode. It's an exciting time to be at Amtrak. We have a new CEO, and that's quite frankly what attracts me to this organization. My prior 30 years I spent with the U.S. Government Accountability Office. Some of you may know GAO. It's the research and investigative arm of the U.S. Congress. I wasn't quite ready to retire after 30 years, so starting my second career, and maybe, who knows, 5 years from now I'll be on my third, right behind Larry. So anyway, I look forward to the discussion and telling you a little bit more about Amtrak and types of people we're looking for. Thank you.
Great. Okay, thanks. Let me ask you guys a question, or reflect on your own careers, and then I think we'll eventually come around in the conversation to things you're looking for from new employees or interns like our students. But reflecting on your own careers, what was the first point in your career? And Talmer, maybe we'll start with you, because you were big corporate, now you're an entrepreneur and an owner. What was the first point in your career where you kind of encountered the skills involved in management?
As somebody being managed, or
as somebody who had to manage.
Okay.
Yeah,
talk
us through that.
It was funny. I apologize. I think it was Greg that mentioned, and I might have been Larry, that they found that they were constantly in management roles, and you started also. I think that if you have a skill set, you find it is always there, and so I was very early on while working through college. I did not go straight through the 4 years, started 2 years at a university, ran out of money, decided I had to work. So I went out and did a bunch of jobs that I thought were just paying the bills. And I found that I was always in supervisory or management roles, regardless of the industry. And it was through a mentor who said, what you do is not, everybody can't do that. And I hadn't really thought of the idea of managing or running companies as a skill set. I thought I was doing that till I found my secret genius. I was going to, sing. You don't want me to sing. But I was convinced that it was just something I was doing until the right thing came along. And a mentor reminded me that I could make a whole career out of this. And so I went back and got very focused and finished my education at the age of 27. And it was the best thing I ever did. But as far as the first time, I don't remember a time when I wasn't in some kind of a supervisory or management role, just because there's an opportunity to lead in all situations.
Right, so it happened early.
Yeah, very early. Yeah.
And Ed, your company in the management space, for those of you who don't know it, we have a lot of courses and work in and around human resources, organizational behavior, just understanding why people do the things they do. Then we have a whole nother set of courses about managing or overseeing or even leading that process. I teach the leadership course for MBAs. Your current company is in the HR side of things, and yet you're running your current company. So which one of these sides of the business, the HR technical competencies or the leading organizations or people competencies, did you encounter first?
So, look, at the end of the day, no matter what you do, it comes down to people. I don't care what you start out as. I want to piggyback off of her question, if you don't mind. My senior year at George Mason University, I had the opportunity to work with Professor Offer. I don't know if anybody knows him. And I did an independent study. And the independent study was to create a business plan and implement the business plan and get the financing for the business and get it running. Within 1 year, I was able to open the business. Within, I think it was 18 months, I opened 3 new locations. And that was because of George Mason. From that point, though, I recognize that it's not all about business plans and operations. It's all about people, understanding how to motivate them. The biggest things you guys are going to want to remember is emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and how to deal with conflict. I think that's the biggest ones.
And what are you seeing in your job which kind of combines? Your job's running an enterprise, but the enterprise itself advises on human resources, human capital, things like that. Which of these things takes up most of your time? Is it running your own firm or being an expert in the stuff your firm does for other people?
You know, if you empower your people, the firm will run itself. Honestly, I am a big believer in that. So I'm fortunate enough to have a really good team around me. I empower them, I coach them, I mentor them. And to be honest with you, they coach me and mentor me. So it goes both ways. But if you put the right people in place and you empower, the rest of the business is easy. So, and you can focus on your core competencies.
Are folks familiar with the term emotional intelligence? Is that a mystery to some people? The basic idea is when we associate leaders or managers, we say, we want them to be smart, right? It's a nice quality. We want them to be tough. Visionary, those kind of things. And that's all great. But it turns out it's not enough. It's not enough to be a good manager or a good leader. You need to be also self-aware. You need to be empathetic. You need to have self-restraint. You need to be compassionate. And so the combination of these things, IQ, smart, but you also need to have EQ, or sometimes referred to as emotional intelligence. So
I failed on the IQ side, but the EQ is pretty high.
Yeah. You're all emotional intelligence, 100%. Good. That's good. Greg, what about you? When was the first? You're the CEO of your own firm now, but you mentioned you did some things before. How old were you, and how do you know management when you see it? When you're walking down the hallway as a new employee, how do you know all of a sudden, oh gosh, I'm in management? When did that happen for you?
Yeah, so I would say it happened, John, in the mid-'90s. I worked for a company called Black & Decker, if you guys have heard of them. And I helped them launch a very successful brand, the DeWalt Power Tool brand. If you guys seen the yellow tools everywhere on job sites, whatever, it was really cool. When I first started with the company, we had just Black & Decker Industrial, and nobody would buy them because the professional thought they were cheap homeowner tools. And basically all we did was rebrand, paint them yellow, and it was the same insides on these tools, and now it's the #1 selling brand of power tool. But I started with a sales territory there. I was promoted to being a manager, and I loved it. I loved the team that I had, diverse team underneath me with different skills, and it was really cool to harness their skills and bring everybody together to hit a common goal, which was a sales number at the time. And it was a great experience.
Thanks. Larry, what about you? When did you go from doing lawyer stuff as a new lawyer for clients to managing other lawyers and processes and parts of the business and things?
I, too, started in school before ever being in a job. I was editor of the high school newspaper, general manager of the university radio station. But when you practice law, unlike a lot of other fields where there are org charts and you know exactly what slot you fill and who you report to and who reports to you, it's a little more amorphous in a law firm. So I would say a year or two out of law school, as I was practicing, and junior people had come in a year and 2 years behind me right out of law school, I was now the mid-level associate who was bringing junior associates into the fold on a deal, and nobody tells you today is the day you're part of management. It just happens. And as we've discussed on the panel, and you mentioned, the heart of management is interpersonal relationships and knowing how to deal with people. And for you to have that general understanding, unlike in law, we talk about there are substantive areas of law and there are procedural areas. So you're going to pick a job or a career in a particular industry. That's the substance of what you do. The procedural part, the interpersonal relationships, is management. So those of you who have elected management as your major are getting a leg up on understanding how you work with other people within the organizational structure.
And you're right, you don't always know when it happens. You could be 23, 24, and all of a sudden somebody says, hey, I need you to take charge of this project. And you may have known about the technical things on the project, but that's the first time in your life where somebody just is like, what's with this take charge business? Are there processes? Are there skills? Do you have a book? Do you have a checklist or something you go along with?
Nope.
That just kind of happens the first time, right? So I would say the other thing, and Stephen, I'm curious about this in your thing. Tell us about your own experience when you first encountered it, but also we have a lot of different organizations up here, from a major iconic transportation organization to a bank to a business development company to a human capital consulting firm to every kind of entrepreneurial activity that Telmar is involved in, and management stretches across all of them. It's not like some fields that are more restricted to one place or another. If you have an accounting degree, it might be a little more restricted. You can go to companies, you can go to accounting firms, but it doesn't apply everywhere, whereas management applies everywhere. So, Steve, if you could tell us a little bit about your own experience, and we'll start back this way with the kind of second set of questions is, where do you see it on people under 25 in your firm? How do you know when they're doing management in Amtrak?
Well, that's a great question because I reflect back on my own career. I should clarify, I'm a graduate of this university, an MBA with a management concentration. And the reason I got my first job was through an internship. Of course, I was a low person on the totem pole. And at the time, I said, well, I'm not going to have to apply any of this till I get into the management ranks. And I quickly found everything we did, and still is today, through a small team environment. So I would like to second what Ed said. You really have to be self-aware. You have to know what your emotional IQ is. One thing I would encourage everyone in the room to do is to take the 360 feedback, those surveys, find out a little bit more about yourself. Because to really be successful, you really have to be able to interact with people of all types. We really value diversity at my organization, so we think that really enriches everybody's experience. But at the same time, if you're used to just working by yourself, it makes things difficult. So that's why I really appreciated my graduate education here, all those case studies, group studies, everything you had to do in those small groups. That was like a really great preparation for me later in my career because you're always interacting with people of all types, all stripes, and everybody's different, and you just have to be able to respect that.
It's a great point. I should also say there's another thing where you can learn a little bit more about yourself as everybody has a certain temperament, personality, cognitive style that kind of defines you as a potential manager. There's a tool you can use free as a Mason student called Strength Finders. Just Google Strength Finders and Mason. As a Mason student, you get an automatic free Strength Finders. It takes, about a half hour, I think, to do it. And it'll tell you your relative stronger areas and the relative areas you may want to work on developing in terms of what you're hearing here about what it takes to be an effective manager or an effective leader. So that's a great tool that you guys have available to you now. Yeah, please. Yeah.
Make sure you take it. Be honest with yourself when you're taking it. Don't take it as what you want to be or what you think you are. Be true to yourself when you're taking that.
That's great advice. In fact, I often tell people you may want to take it with good friends around because you may say, well, hey, I'm great at this. And you need those friends to be like, actually, you kind of suck at this, right? So, you can turn it into a game if you want. It's probably, better than something else. And, honesty and maybe a couple of checks. Stephen, let me start with you and then work back down the panel. At Amtrak, if you're let's say between 22 and 28, what do 22 to 28-year-olds who are involved in management do at Amtrak? What does their life look like?
Well, that's a great question. Of course, it depends what part of the organization you're in certain areas, like the IT group, obviously. It's full of young millennials, but I think it's really interesting because they have different expectations, which has caused a sea change in some of the way we view things. It's good to be impatient, demanding, bored easily. Obviously it stimulates your intellectual curiosity. And the current operating model is, well, I'll spend a few years here and I'll move on. I'm considered an oddity. I actually worked at one organization for over 30 years and retired at the same place. So they sort of come by and look at me and like, oh, that guy, yeah, that's interesting. That's how it used to be done. So we're very mindful of the fact of the need to give people a varied, interesting experience. And I can speak, obviously, this is the Office of Inspector General. We're just one small part of the organization. I don't want to generalize across the entire organization, but we do have a new CEO, brand new. He's considered world-class leader. He used to run Delta Airlines. I'm sure everybody's heard of Delta. And I expect, the pace of change is going to quicken even faster than it has in the last year.
In your office, in the IG's office, about what stage in employees' careers do they start to pick up management responsibilities?
Oh, I would say after about, once you prove yourself on a project, you're assigned as a so-called team lead. That could be 3 to 5 years. At first, we want you to be technically proficient. Then that's where all the soft skills come into play, all the management skills you hopefully acquired here. But again, even when you're brand new, you have to report up. When I was brand new, I was the junior member of a team, and I found it's important. You have to manage up as well. So you have to have that perspective on what your boss's expectations are, needs, et cetera, et cetera. So I always found myself managing up, even though I was, at the time an intern. So if you have that perspective, I think it really helps too.
Yeah. I'm on the 11 o'clock Excel to New York tomorrow. If I say I know the IG, will I get sort of bumped up to first class or something?
You'll probably get a frown. Again, we're the independent watchdog of the organization. At the end of the day, we help things work better, but sometimes there's a little consternation when we're there because,
Yeah, I'm not saying it. All right. Larry, what about you? The bank, the bank's grown so much. And there's a lot of different things that happen at the bank. But maybe you can just range us across some of the principal activities and tell us where people earlier in their career start doing management things at Eagle Bank.
I would say you can do them on day one. So before I get into kind of different career opportunities, let me address the question you raised, which is how do you know when you see a manager?
Right.
Our CEO, Ron Paul, gave a speech here at the business school a couple of years ago. I don't know if it's accessible online or not, but what he looks for in anybody are things like passion. Don't just show up at your job. Care. Really care and try to make a difference. Expertise. In today's world, it's very hard to be successful when you know a little bit about everything as compared to a lot about something. Your reputation will never show up on your financial statement. It's the most important asset you will ever have. So always act with integrity. Show accountability. It's not somebody else's job to make it right. It's your job. Step up to the plate and make things happen. So those are some of the qualities. You can be 50, you can be 22. Ron always says, think of ourselves like a team. We're looking for the right players. You find me the good player, I'll find him the right position on the team.
And you guys are kind of so-called best athlete hires, right? Because you can train skills, but you'd rather hire for personality and eagerness and competency. You can train the skills, right?
That's right. Banking is not the most sophisticated profession. So you can learn the skills on the job, but you can't learn how to be successful. That comes from within you and having that fire in the belly. So at a bank, it's everything from being on the production side of lending, where you help bring in the loans and the borrowers. You make sure that the numbers work and the project makes sense. I always say that while we look at a borrower's financial statement, we look at their character statement even more. I care more about whether that borrower really promises to repay the loan and has that integrity than just the numbers on a spreadsheet. You can be on the credit side where you're doing the equivalent of the IG. You're testing every number to make sure that it pans out. You can work in the branches from the simplest of a teller up to a branch manager, up to pure management of branch managers. We have HR, we have IT, we have legal, we have all the different departments of finance that you would think would support. So there's the kind of the operating divisions like lending and branches, and then there are all the support divisions like legal and finance and IT and HR and so forth. And we have had people who have moved laterally from one area to another because we found that we had the player and now we found the right seat on the bus for them to sit.
Right. That's a great point. Every organization in the world, whether it's a 3-person church choir or IBM, only has one thing in common. They're full of people working together trying to accomplish something. So management makes you adept in that dynamic, the common dynamic of all human organizations, and it can stretch across a lot of different parts of a bank or different kinds of organizations. Greg, you need from your new hires, and you've hired some of our best over the past years, you need good analytical skills. You need them to be able to write. You need to be able to. But at what point in working at your company do you start looking at seeing if they have management capacity or not just have good technical skills?
Yeah, great question. At Key Solutions, we hire people that aren't that much older than you guys, and early on, we put them to the test in terms of their management skills, and it's not it's not in an org chart or something like that. It's running a proposal team, a proposal manager, and you guys, you know the projects, the group projects that you have to do sometimes, right? How do you feel about them? You love them? Okay.
Because everybody does.
I mean, I'm not sure if things have changed, but when I was in school, there was one person like that in my group, and then 3 or 4 people that didn't do much, and then, another person that cared or so. And so, anyway, my point is, those projects that you like and that you lead, those are really important at my company because now you're running a proposal team, and you've got 4 or 5 people that are reporting to you. You're in charge of a deliverable. You got to have attention to detail. You have to be good with technology. And you have a deadline. Usually it's 30 days, as you know. Yeah. Sometimes it's 30 days. So you're running a project 30 days at a time.
It's a pressure cooker.
Very much. And it might be evenings, it might be weekends, but in the end, you'll have a finished product. You'll get the satisfaction of delivering that proposal. But we learn early on, and if you guys are interested in something like that, you're learning a great skill here at the business school with your project teams and things like that. So.
That's a great point because managing peers under pressure, that's 2 very difficult dimensions of running something.
Absolutely. You talk about conflict and things like that. Sometimes you have to have tough discussions, that, hey, you didn't deliver on time or your work product's pretty weak or whatever. And so you learn at an early age, guys, how to manage. And we're having a record year, and it's because of a couple of people that have graduated from George Mason they're only 5 years older than you guys. And they're killing it. They're good with technology. They're into what they do. The clients love them and keep asking them to come back. And it's really not that far from where you guys are today.
That's great. And I thought, Larry, your point just about being energetic and then, Stephen, your point about managing up, it always made a difference to me as a CEO if somebody came by, and they could be a brand new hire in a big company, and they would come by and they would say something like, well, what's going on with you? They would ask me a question, and I'd be like, well, I got 100 issues I'm dealing with right now. Can I take one off your plate? And even if they couldn't, I was like, I was sort of like between, well, that's cute, and wow, that's cool. It shows me an attitude. It shows me an appetite for risk and more responsibility. It shows me an empathy towards my issues as in a big company, as a big company CEO. And more often than not, I'd take them up on it. I'd be like, well, do you like, what are you doing this weekend? Just hanging out. Would you like to work on a proposal? Because we got a hot one. Sure. Okay, boom. And all of a sudden, but just asking a lot of times just asking people and managing up in your job and just say, hey, I'm willing to do more. Let me know where I can get involved. Love to help in areas other than the things I'm assigned to.
So
it's just a great quality.
So in a way, we don't tell them they're a manager. They tell us.
Right, yeah.
By how they perform.
Yeah, kind of reaching out. Yeah, good. Ed, what about in your work and for what you're seeing with your clients, what age are you seeing that you're like, boy, this is when your life starts to change from technical and tactical skills to kind of strategic and interpersonal skills, the kind of things that are involved in management?
Right now, this age group right now. Yeah, absolutely. I think at the end of the day, if you're going to look at if somebody can be a good manager, I look at them first. Are you managing your life well? Are you managing your time well? Are you managing your knowledge and your education well? Are you paying attention to the important things? If you're handling your own house, if you will, you'll be able to manage other people as well. So I think that's what I look for. So it's that early maturity and that early hunger and that desire to learn. I think that's what we kind of look for at any age. It doesn't really make a difference. I think we've seen a great amount of examples across the board. Age does not matter at all. So
yeah, this is not something that well, just wait until your 40s. In the meantime, stack up certifications, because in your 40s, someone will ask you to be a boss.
Yeah, no. You got to get your hands dirty. You got to get out there. You got to network. You got to socialize. I know that's scary for some of us. I'm an introvert, believe it or not, but I go out there and I do it anyway. But you got to be willing to take the extra step and get out there. So I think that's a big key.
Yeah, great point about networking too.
Yeah.
All good managers I've worked with all have weird, different careers. I've got a book coming out in May. My co-author has a PhD in medieval literature, and then he became a corporate consultant, an organizational development consultant, right? So he's got a weird career, and they can come from anywhere. But all good managers have an interest in human organizations and what makes them tick, and this quality you just referred to, which is the strategic network, a strategic network where you can reach out and touch different people to potentially get things done. Every good manager seems to have a strategic network. Is that something you would say management people should think about building?
Absolutely. Never say no, I don't do that, or no, I don't want to learn that. Learn it all. You never know. I can't remember the book's name, but it basically calls it association. You never know if you learn something engineering, how that's going to apply to some other area that you're working in. So learn as much as possible, even if it's art. Learn as much as possible. You never know how it could help you out.
And strategic networking is not handing your business card to strangers. It's forming real relationships with people that are not transactional, that you can each know each other and learn from each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Figure out how to add value to them as much as you want them to add value to you.
Yeah, that's a great tip. That's a great tip. Tamar, in your career, we talked about you saw it early. What do you look for now, and how early do you look for to people that, younger folks that work with you or work near you, where you start grading them, even quietly, on the management versus their technical skills?
What? We look at people and we judge them? That is so shocking to me. You're always being watched, and people that meet you when they're out and about. For me, I work with entrepreneurs of all ages. More and more people coming out of school have a conceptual idea of what they want to build so that they can be business owners or entrepreneurs on their own. But whether you're going into a major corporation or starting your own, the management component that I notice most in successful managers is an understanding of perspective. This is critical. The people that will have success are the people that could consider that someone doesn't have to agree with their point of view. That's a harder and harder thing to find in individuals. I'm right. I just need to say it a different way so that you understand that I'm right. I need you to agree with me. And managers have to be able to have conversations that both share your perspective, consider the other's perspective, and still find a way to create a common communication that will allow you to go forward. Now, sometimes that communication is this isn't going to work out for us. But oftentimes in a business, you can find a way to consider that when I said green, I meant forest green, and you thought lime green. And so that's where our miscommunication came from. You need to remember that perspective is what lets a manager be excellent. If you can consider that they don't have the same education, the same background, and you really have no idea how their mind came to the assumption they made by a sentence you said, you must always be asking. So for me, anyone that can be in a conversation and can consider the other person's point of view without negating it, I'm like, there's a chance that that person can be a manager. And if it's not my way or the highway, you have a real chance for success.
Yeah, it comes back to Ed's point about being able to manage conflict.
Yeah,
core skill of management.
If I could add to that, and I'm sure everyone in here is doing some type of group work or group assignment, and toward the end of it, you're like, man, I can't wait till I graduate, because in the real world, I don't have to deal with conflict. I don't have to deal with these people. Guess what? You're going to deal with everybody. So be ready for that now. Learn how to navigate that now, because it only gets harder when you enter the real world. So
Great thought. Well, let's start fielding some questions from you guys, and if we've got a lot, we'll just try to, be brief, panel, and giving some insight. So, anybody got one right here? I think we're going to give you a microphone so everybody can hear. So, I'm going to give you my microphone. There we go. Yeah, please. And you can just say who you are and then ask your question. Great.
Okay, so I'm a student here, obviously. My name is Jasmine Shelton. I'm a sophomore. So my question is, so I know a lot of you had mentioned that some of you guys got internships out of college and that helped you also to develop your management. Do any of your companies offer internships that we could be possibly looking at?
I'll take this one first. We actually have a relationship with Mason where we have Eagle Bank internships. There are some here in Northern Virginia. There are some in suburban Maryland. But we look forward to the opportunity to having you come join us.
I would like to add on to what Larry provided. We do offer paid internships, and I find that's an excellent way to check out a company. Again, I was an intern many, many, many years ago. I really didn't know much about the organization I was joining. Once I was there, I realized what a great place it was to work. Same time, they were checking me out. That was the principal mechanism they used to hire staff. So I'm trying to replicate that now at the Amtrak Office of Inspector General. We will have several internships starting in the spring, so I encourage you to check us out. And again, these are paid internships. Unlike a lot of the other federal inspector generals, due to budgetary considerations, I would expect some of them may be cutting back, but we're definitely in the hiring mode.
And I would also let you know that the Women in Business Initiative Board is constantly pointing people to the career services here. We are doing everything we can within our own industries to spread the word about the fact that George Mason has great students, and we're trying to help them build internships, and we are only promoting paid ones. So make sure you're going through the career services as well.
So yes to my organization, but just remember, you're part of the Mason family now. So even if I don't have something, it's my job to make sure you get something. So feel free to reach out to us.
Anything you guys do internships, Greg?
We do. There's not a lot. We're like an accounting firm or a law firm, and we're kind of flat. So there's not a whole lot of layers of management where we have that. But we bring in a select one or two every couple of years. What we really prefer is you guys go get some experience with Northrop Grumman or General Dynamics, learn a skill like that, Sotera, and then come back to us after you've learned the government contracting community.
Then you steal my people.
Yeah. Exactly.
Good. Yeah, I hear you on the paid internships, but I would also say if you get a chance to do something that you're going to be good at, unpaid, don't turn your nose up at that, because you just need to get into the system. Once you're in, then you can see once you're in. You can see what's going on. It's a great experience. So, yeah, great question. Other questions? We got another question over there. Do we have the mic? The mic? Okay, we're just coming around. All right, this is actually, don't go out and bet on this tonight, but we had a guy in an Eagles jersey and a guy in a Redskins jersey. The guy in the Redskins jersey is asking his question first, so I don't know what that means about tonight's game.
We're going to class later together.
Okay,
yeah.
All right, great.
Hi, my name is Matt. I'm a senior. Stephen, you talked a little bit about different expectations that Amtrak has to manage because of millennials. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And for the others, what are some of the changes that you've noticed in management from the day that you guys started to today, basically?
Yeah, great question. Just quickly, I think there's an expectation, at least I appreciate now, the people we hire may not be with us their entire career. Maybe after 5 years, if they've had a successful 5 years, they may be interested in checking another place out. I hope not, because we're obviously investing a lot in their training and development, but I think that's a reality. You have to factor that in your hiring plans.
I agree with that. Definitely. We used to think that we were going to have an employee for 20 years, and we've changed, and you guys have helped us learn that. But I will say this, we've learned a ton from the millennials about not having 8 o'clock meetings in the morning, and basically just empowering the young folks to do their job, and it doesn't matter if they're in the office or if it's a remote location, but give them the empowerment, and then they deliver. And you're not big on titles, it's just pay me well, treat me well. I want to respect my boss. I want to respect the company I work for. And that's what we try to provide for our young folks.
And I think that what we've learned by the fact that people aren't staying with companies longer than 2 to 5 years for the most part, which is definitely a generational change, is that we have to be, as an organization, more transparent and specific on how to be promoted and how to get from one step to the next step. Because I think that companies that aren't clear about, hey, not only can you do this for 2 years, the next progression would be here, and here's some skill sets you can be working on. I think that a company that is really investing on communicating how you could make that a longer career within a company is giving you opportunities to advance in your management skills or your profession. And I think that that's the challenge that successful companies are making, is they're really creating paths and being specific on, if you want to go to the next step, we do have that opportunity here for you. So.
And what about this, and Larry too, maybe, what about the second part of the question, which was, what's changed in management over the past couple of years? What's new that we should be ultra aware of?
We care about you now. That's the reality. We are not, 10, 20 years ago, you come to work, you clock in, you get paid, you go home. That's your job. Now it's building a relationship with you building a relationship with us. We're really investing in you, understanding what your strengths are, what your motivations are. So there's more of an investment. And the reality is, we know that you're probably going to leave in 2 to 3 years. It's actually our job, at least from my perspective, to prepare you for that, in hopes that you may come back one day, or in hopes that we may partner in something else one day. So I think that's where the game has changed quite a bit.
Yeah, it's a good point. I had a high potential program at Sotera. I take 22, 23 of the most high potential young managers, 25 to 30 or so, and put them through some extra training. And for a lot of them, it sort of woke them up to their own potential, and they'd leave. Mm-hmm. And then their manager would call me up and yell and say, "Oh, thanks a lot. I lost Jen Webster because you made her realize she's amazing." I'm like, well, that's on you and me. We didn't do enough to be amazing enough to keep her, right? And some would come back. But it's just, I agree, that's a new dimension. Larry, what are you seeing out there in these things?
We've done the same thing. We have a formal leadership development and training program now that we never had years ago. We started with 12 mid-level managers who we kind of viewed as the next generation of leadership, assigned to each one a member of senior staff as a mentor, and went through a 6-month program together with graduation and everything. And now we've rolled it out so that up and down the line people can take leadership development training at Eagle Bank. And while we accept the reality that they may not be with us, we don't accept that that's what we want, and we work hard to keep people.
Are there still places where people can have a good career if they want, develop the whole time, not get bored?
I think banking, it may not be as sexy as investment banking, for example, but it certainly provides an entire career with the growth in intellectual stimulation and responsibility. We started the bank only 20 years ago, 1998, with, I think it was 20 people. 6 of those 20 are still with the bank.
Well, I was I would add that I think it's to the point of the second and third career, you will keep your management experience and skill set, but you might just apply it in a new industry, and that's where the challenge comes, right? If you're feeling like I've done this banking for a while, but Amtrak, transportation is very appealing to me, the great thing about management is that it really does cross industries. And so the skill set of teams and people and understanding the structures that go in there. I mean, if you're a communicator, you can cross industries. And that's where the interesting careers that you were talking about, John, come from, is because once you've done that, you can take a different education base and apply those skill sets.
Yeah, I think that's right. I've had a third of my career as a government manager, a third in financial services, and a third in defense technology. Yeah. The only three things they had in common was all about the management and leadership skills. It wasn't about the X's and O's of the businesses themselves. Yeah. Okay, great questions. Another question out there? Yep, coming your way. Is the microphone coming for you?
Thank you. So I'm 38, and I'm a junior here. I started a little bit late in life and kind of did it backwards. I had a 10-year career in the oil field, and then I did 8 years of service in the military as an infantryman. So I've been in leadership since I was about 17, started out as an assistant manager of 7-Elevens. My question for the panel, and something I've failed to learn along my journey here, is how is it that you learn what the capabilities of your team members are? And sometimes they're not so apparent. So.
I think that when it comes to management, people underestimate the amount of time you have to spend in front of each and every single employee. The time is being there and being present. And I think that with the way that our culture has changed in business, it's easier to develop relationships beyond you hit your quota or you didn't hit your quota, right? It's different than when we started and we were 17. So I think that's the opportunity and the tools are now favored by the kind of corporate entity. They encourage us to develop the relationship. They encourage us to have the conversations and ask people, what do you need from me to do as your manager? What do you need from me to do your job well? What can I do to make sure you have the right tools, the right people, the right access? And we're more open to listening. And I just think that that's the big shift that's different. So I don't know that it's a failure so much as it's just a different way of operating than we used to do.
What was your name again? Abraham. First of all, thank you for your service, and I love your hairdo, by the way. It's great. So it's actually, at the end of the day, it's simply taking the person out for a cup of coffee and asking them questions, getting to know them. It's not rocket science. It really isn't. Ask them, what do you like? What don't you like? What motivates you? What are you strong in? What are you weak in? Sometimes they're going to get it right, sometimes they're not. But at the end of the day, your job is to relationship build. The three letters I want you to remember is K, M, and O. K being knowledge barriers, M being motivational barriers, and O being organizational barriers. It is your job to figure out what are the knowledge barriers or the lack of knowledge that is impeding your employee from succeeding at their job. What are the motivational barriers? In other words, what makes them click? Do they see the utility value? For example, you guys are all here today. Hopefully you see the utility in being here. And then the organizational barriers, that's on you. Can you eliminate any of the organizational barriers that's getting in their way? For example, not having 8 a.m. meetings. That's an organizational barrier. So try to fragmentize that in that way, and then it'll become a little bit easier for you.
I think just to add on that, I learned from my people by trying to have regular check-ins as opposed to the old school way of 1 or 2 appraisals a year, performance appraisals every year. So regular check-ins, and then just keeping it real with the people. Like Ed said, just talking directly, having a dialogue. And then the third thing is knowing what I know and what I think about people, putting in positions to succeed.
I think it comes back to what Ed says. We care. We realize that the ability for us to be successful and to stay successful is only as strong as our people are, and so we invest because that's the best investment we can make for our company.
Yep. Good. You know, in my leadership class, on the very first night, I asked the teams people split up into teams, I asked them to list the qualities of the best leader they ever had in their life. Maybe it was a teacher, maybe it was a coach, just often a parent sometimes. And they list the qualities, and I have them draw a picture. What does this leader look like? And they often draw a leader who's got big ears, so they're listening, right? They're not just talking. They draw a leader who's got a big heart. They draw leaders maybe down on a knee, kind of, I'm here to serve you kind of thing. But that's changed over the years. In the old days, it was like, they would draw patent, right? Just tell me what to do. But now nowadays, I think, people really do want this conversation. You get a lot out of it as a leader, I think.
But I would just say, Abraham, don't think that everybody is like this. You've got a panel up here who are with successful companies, and one of the reasons we're successful is because we have that perspective. But it's incumbent upon you, as you do your job in career search, to get that feel yourself as to whether this particular company has that in it.
That's a great point. There are still places. But increasingly, even in, I don't know if your own military experience ever served as mine. I was in the tough end, too. I was in the cavalry side. And increasingly, even in the military, it's not one of those organizations you just tell people what to do. Right. You can get away with that for maybe a day, and after that, they're going to be like, why? Right. And then you got to explain it to them, and the motivational. You got to provide them a different motivation than I said so.
It comes back to a term called joint accountability. You're accountable to making sure you build that relationship and learning about them, but they're also accountable to giving you the information to help them succeed. So keep that in mind.
We got a couple more minutes. Another question out there. Anybody? Yep, there we go. Thank you. And by the way, if you're not getting your question in when we break, it's going to be for networking and stuff. So if you don't have to run off to class or work, hang around and ask your question. Go ahead, please.
So my name is David Housen. I'm a freshman here. So my question is, I know you guys mentioned earlier how some of you got management positions straight out of college. How common is that for the millennial crowd? And also, would like a high school job management position, would that have any effect on getting a management position straight out of college?
I would say yes. I mean, it depends on the industry. It depends on the organization. There are absolutely opportunities for millennials. Millennial isn't necessarily something that's going to be held against you, but it definitely has a name now, right? And people think that you won't show up for an 8 o'clock meeting. And so, if you will, you want to make sure you tell them that you're committed to doing what needs to be done. But yes, any experience, your experience in high school, absolutely. If you're supervising a business, a counter, a person, 3 people, if you are volunteering, if you're interning, as you go throughout the university, you lead projects, any opportunity you have to flex those management skills, you should absolutely be taking credit for and telling everybody when you're ready to apply for any kind of position. Take ownership of those successes. Be willing to talk about them. It can't be, I was on this team. What made you good at that role? And why do you think they listen to you? Those would be questions that I would expect people to follow up with. So as long as you get comfortable answering those questions and recognizing where your skill sets were successful, I would use it 100%.
And so I would say you have to be your own best salesperson. Don't just show up in an interview and expect answers to come from the potential employer. You have to sell yourself. And selling yourself means not just what did you do, but what is it about you that will make you a valuable contributor to the prospective employer.
Yeah, I always tell people when they go for interviews, play a game in your head. Try to ask as many questions as you're being asked. Because when you're asking questions about them and leading it back to, and so how could I fit in and help you here? It implies a kind of intellectual curiosity, a work ethic. You've done some research on it. And also just makes you seem very highly intelligent, right? So tell me, what are your biggest challenges around here? Because I'm thinking about how I fit my kind of skills into what you're doing. And people are like, oh, yeah, I love that. People like to talk about what they're about. So don't just show up and be ready to get interrogated, right? Do some asking as well in your interviews. Other thoughts on this? This is another good question.
Yeah, I was going to say, especially you as a freshman, right now, you got plenty of time to put yourself in leadership positions. So go be a RA or an RD or a Greek organization or whatever clubs you have interested in. So we see that on your resume. We're like, oh, this guy can lead. He's shown it already the last 4 years. So I would say you guys try to get that kind of experience before you graduate.
Yeah, I just want to say this a little bit differently. Get that millennial stuff out of your head. Yeah. Really. You're already setting yourself up for failure. You already think that you're going against some brick wall. You're not. If you put in the work, if you ask the right questions, if you do what you're supposed to do, you'll be fine.
Okay, maybe a mini. Let's do a mini question or a short one. If you've got the mic, good.
I'll try. Hi, my name is Alex. I'm a junior here at George Mason, and I'm a management major. My question had a little bit to do with the last one. It was about, like, how do you market yourself, like what skills in particular. I'm an RA, for example. You can't be an RD. That's actually a graduate level position, just to let you know. So I'm an RA. I'm also involved in clubs, organizations, and I'm also have a job on campus. So what skills in particular do you look for, and what other aspects? And then another little part of the question would be networking. I know networking is a very big part of the job. I don't know if any of you have gotten any of your positions through networking, and asking other individuals to maybe get that interview and maybe get that conversation with that manager. So, yeah.
Well, you guys are I'll just answer on networking from my perspective. After that, I would say after the age of 40, I don't even look at your resume if you're over 40. All I do when I'm potentially hiring you, is I call 3 people you've worked for that I know, or that know somebody I know, and I just say, hey, what was your name again? I'm sorry. Alex. Tell me about Alex. Am I crazy not to hire Alex, or what? And if I hear Alex was definitely worked here. Yep, I can confirm he worked here. Or if I hear, you're nuts if you don't hire Alex. And we're going to have a conversation. And I didn't even, when I was a CEO, I didn't even know where my other C officers went to school. I couldn't tell you when they went to college, the CFO or anything. What I knew is I had done a search on their character, not their competency, by reaching out to the network that connected us. Saying, tell me about Alex. What kind of person is he? What kind of leader is he? People listen to him. Why? Why would they listen to Alex? Right? So those are the kind of things. And I'd said that for senior people, but I think that applies further down the chain, too. Some of the so it's not just what's on your resume, it's maybe the references and what people say about you. So that's my answer, but what about the panel?
I couldn't agree with you more, Alex. In fact, I think that's what we're doing now, isn't it? Networking. Yeah. So that just, I think, underscores the importance of doing that. Also, one tip, I review a lot of resumes, and there's various ways to present yourself. Whatever you do, have someone proofread your document, because I can tell you, if you're reading a lot of them and you see some just a little sloppiness, I can't, at least with me, it forms an impression like, oh, Alex could be a good guy, but he didn't really spend a lot of time putting his resume together. So I would say you need both. You got to present yourself well on paper, but networking part is very important as well.
I would say, Alex, you're on your way with your extracurricular stuff that you're doing right now. So keep that up. Now work on your network. So get to know your professors, your classmates, your neighbors when you go home. They're all working somewhere, and build affiliations with those folks. And I know you guys are probably much more savvy on social media than I am, but get a good LinkedIn. With a good profile of your experience, the things that you're interested in and you've done well in. Make it a good picture. Just my son's your age, and he had proof across his LinkedIn picture. And I said, no, you got to take that thing down. So
don't have the glasses that look like champagne glasses. Don't wear those in the picture. I've seen that.
So those things count. We do check LinkedIn and other social media avenues.
Yeah, and as far as skill sets, what we're going to want if we're trying to bring you into a manager role is we want to know about people interactions. We want to know what your your peers think of you, people that might have been managed by you, people that may have managed you. So we're going to want to know experiences and how those relationships played out. And we're really going to the networking thing is critical. If you know what industry you're interested in, I really want to encourage you to start going out and thinking of ways to get involved and meet people around that, right? If you know that you want to work for a CPA firm, start looking at some that seem interesting to you and find out where they're networking. And I think that those relationships are important, right? Because it would be nice to apply to a position and be able to reference someone as one of your people that you met 2 years ago, and you've been able to follow up with them and get to know them a little bit so they could testify to your character. They might not have worked with you, but they might have met other people that know you that also find the integrity you have in that. So start developing the relationships now. Again, the word management equals relationship. That is it. You need to be able to show that you've already got those relationships somewhere down the line, and that will get you much further faster, I think.
Great point to end on. Before I ask you to help me thank the panel, can you give special thanks to Larry and Eagle Bake for sponsoring the event? Thank you. And then Stephen, Larry, Greg, Ed, Talmer, this has been a great panel, as Larry pointed out. I mean, successful, I'll call them enlightened companies. You want to work for employers like this that are that think this way. They'll care about you as much as it can be. So please join me in thanking the panel, and then hang around for networking on behalf of the School of Business. Thanks very much. Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
I'm with AOCT.
Yeah. Nice to see you. Say hey to Lisa and Amber.
Yeah.